everyone. This is Yakini coming to you from ADHD Love, and we have another episode of ADHD Love Parent Talk. And I am so excited to have Adam, also known as Coach Adam. So we are going to be talking about ADHD from his perspective. So hello, Adam, and welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Yakini. It's such an honor to be here and such an honor to know you. So I'm delighted to be here.
Very exciting. So I wanted you to kick it off by just introducing yourself and then just give a little background about why do you know about ADHD?
Sure. So my name is Adam Katowski. I go by Coach Adam. My website is coachadam34.com. And what I did is I developed a kind of a mental training approach for a lot of student athletes, which has ventured into working with a lot of students and parents and coaches and going into schools and updating them on what I feel is what I call the "you are extraordinary," the extraordinary me. I've been doing this for about 17 years now. I am married. I'm the father of 4 wonderful and amazing, extraordinary kids. And I have had ADHD my whole life. So I have been working with a lot of people and communicating with a lot of parents and school officials, just what it was from my experience as a student and now as an adult, and the impact it's had and the importance of understanding it.
So when were you actually diagnosed? What age?
So I was thinking about this. I think I was around 5th grade, if I can do the timeline.
Okay.
I'm 45 now, so it's I've been out of school for a little while.
Gotcha.
And Yakini, back then they didn't really have the tools we did today. But I just remember being in the counselor's office with my mom, and my dad worked all kinds of crazy hours, and my mom was with me, and we were talking to the principal and the counselor, and she's like, for lack of better verbiage, your son is not good at learning. And the diagnosis, I don't know if it's officially called ADHD, but that's exactly what it was. So it was kind of a kick to the teeth, you would say, as a kid, because when you're told, man, you just don't learn right. Okay.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So let me ask, so you got this diagnosis, and what you said, it wasn't necessarily ADHD back then, but you had this diagnosis. How did you feel about that as a 5th grader?
I'm going to say something now, Yakini, that really helped me along the way. I really felt back then that my life is a journey, and I think everybody has a journey through life. And I can remember being 2 years old, and I know this sounds funny, but I was diagnosed with a septic hip at age 2, and I was in Children's Memorial Hospital, which is now Lurie's Children's Hospital. And I always say I'm a graduate of there because they were going to amputate my leg. They didn't really have anything to deal with what had developed there with the staph infection. And I remember medically going through a lot of the pain and torture I did as a kid. And I brought that with me to that time when I was in 5th grade, and they said that you basically can't learn effectively. And I said, well, if I got through that at age 2, I can get through this, and I'll just figure out a different way of learning. So I had that kind of identity and belief at that time, which again leads me to where I am with coaching today. I just, I say with every diagnosis, they handle the diagnosis, but you handle the beliefs. And I looked at it even at that time in 5th grade. And I just said, okay, well, I'm going to learn a different way and unique way of learning then, because if it's not according to the way you want, right, I'm still going to do well. And I kind of made it my mission at that time to learn effectively through finishing grade school. And then I went to a very academically demanding high school on the west side of Chicago. And, I would call it the Ivy League of high schools. And I'll never forget this, and I stand by this today. I had a 3.68 cumulative GPA over 4 years with many honors classes because I never let people's diagnosis handle my beliefs. I knew I could do it. I just worked harder. So my Sundays were gone because I was studying and I was just implementing more hard work. And I think that played a major role. So I didn't buy into their diagnosis, and I handled the beliefs. And on top of that, I knew when I was young, if I got through that, I can get through this. And I applied that to today.
That is awesome. And I just love that you didn't allow that situation to control you, right? Some people are just, they tend to give up, or they tend to be mad and angry. And instead of, like you said, pushing forward, they just say, you know what, fine, then I'm just not going to do the work. And instead you looked at it the opposite way and said,
Mhm.
I'm going to do it harder. And that is
Right.
powerful. So
Yeah.
today, as a man, I mean, obviously, because some people have the belief that ADHD tends to go away, that it just disappears
Mhm.
later on in life. So, how do
Yeah.
you manage your day to day today as an ADHD person?
So it's interesting. I focus on one thing at a time. You know, we're taught in so many organizations, and the big thing in everything you'll see in every organization in America right now is, well, let's do more things with less people. Well, guess what? That doesn't favor anybody who has ADHD, because multitasking has never been our forte. We try to focus on, or we should focus on one thing at a time and do that very well. ADHD can be your superpower. And I've said this often, with ADHD, you can be hyper focused on things. We see and feel things that other people don't. So it gives us the ability, if we're hyper focused on something, to probably see something that other people will not or cannot, because of the way that their mind thinks and can be multitasking.
Yes.
So the one thing I will tell you is a 45-year-old man now, father of four, married, who works a professional job and then also does coaching, which I have for 17 years, is focus on the focus at that time.
Okay.
Don't try to do too much, because you can accomplish the same amount by focusing on one task at a time and doing it well before you move on to the next task.
Yes.
My wife is the total opposite. She can do 32 things at one time. And God love her. I mean, that's just her gift.
Mhm.
But I'm not that. And you have to be accepting how you learn and how you get things done, because neither one of us is wrong, but I can get the same amount of things done in a day if I focus on one thing at a time.
And that makes sense. So, as a family man, so what are your, suggestions to other fathers? Um, how do they handle, like you said, focus on one thing at a time? Are there other suggestions that you have as a family man and as a parent, and how do they manage their household?
Absolutely. Be honest. Be honest with your wife. Be honest with your kid. Be honest with whoever. Hey, listen, I learn differently from you. I'm not wrong, but I learn in a specifically different way than you probably can teach. So let's sit down and talk, because we can still be a fantastic team and accomplish so much together. But let's sit down and talk to see how you teach and how I learn, so that we can update both of those to something more effective. Because, like I've always told my wife, 20 years of marriage, I want to help. I want to do, more than half the work if I can, but you're just giving me simple directions. I need a little bit more. So I need you to be a little bit more specific and a little bit more detailed, and I can do it then. And it's probably taken 20 years to get to that point, but Yakini, it's interesting. What's interesting about it is, you just got to sit down and say, okay, I don't learn like you teach, and admit it. And it doesn't mean you're wrong, because there's things that I see that she doesn't, with kids, and how we're raising them. And we all have superpowers, I call it. And I think ADHD really can be, if you use it effectively. But the first key, Yakini, is you've got to admit it, and you've got to be willing to say, okay, help me. Help me understand it. I don't understand the way you're talking about it, the way you're presenting it, but that doesn't mean I don't get it. I will get it if we talk about it in a different way.
Makes sense. So, for those
Mhm.
parents who do have ADHD children, what is your suggestion, or what is your tips for them?
There's a lot of research coming out. I know one of the ladies who's a teacher, she's out in Arizona. She's writing a book with her son, Jason, who's 9 years old. Her name is Nicole Biscotti. She's a New Yorker, moved to Arizona, and she's got a fabulous presentation going right now. I would follow her on Twitter and social media. She's giving fantastic tips on how to deal with a child with ADHD. Um, as a parent, again, Yakini, communication is the key. Um, you have to realize as a parent. I remember, I'll give this example because I know one of our children has it too. You know, my wife really struggled with this child because she always got things right away. She scored high on the ACT, the SAT. I didn't. I might have got credit for my name, and then the standardized tests. I can't really remember. But doesn't mean it never. You know, scoring on a standardized test didn't mean that I wasn't willing to work hard. Hence the 3.68 at a very academically demanding high school. It was a struggle for my wife to communicate with this one child of ours, and I had to coach her on how to say, well, if they're like me, they probably feel it and they visualize it more than how you see it and your puzzle piecing mind does. And a lot of times I would work with that child, but on top of that, I would coach her on what she needed to say, how she had to say it.
Yeah.
You know, John Wooden had a great quote that I live by, Yakini. It's a good coach can give correction without causing resentment.
Mm-hmm.
And if you apply that to parents, people, kids with ADHD, you'll realize you can correct them. You can instill discipline with them without causing resentment. Now, how you do that, you got to research it. You've got to be willing to put in the time and study in it, because you know, communication is never what you intend to say. It's the response you get from somebody else. And I learned that at a very young age. So even though that I might be thinking of effectively communicating, if I get a different response or a unique response from that kid, well, then my communication probably failed. So then I need to find out, how do I get them to respond in an effective manner? And then my communication is successful, I guess you would say.
And that makes sense. I mean, for me, it's about, you know, to sum it up, meeting them where they are, right? So really understanding, you know, my daughter was just recently diagnosed. My son has been diagnosed for about 4 years, and they each have similarities, but they also think very differently in certain situations. So I need to understand how to communicate to my daughter, and I need to understand how to communicate to my son. And I've been learning that over the years, and things change as they get older, they communicate differently, right? So, you know, my daughter's hitting that preteen years, so now her communication's differently, her communication's different. And so being able to meet them where they are in the stage that they are just makes a huge difference, because the last thing I want them to say is, you don't get it, you don't understand me. And, you know, I want them to know that I'm trying. At least I'm trying to understand you. I want to meet you eye to eye, you know, like you just give me the chance, but I am trying to meet you there. But the bottom line is just meeting them where they are. So I think that is so key.
I cannot support everything you just said more. And I'm so thankful that someone like you is doing this and bringing this awareness, Yakini, because we really need it. It's, you know, people with ADHD, including myself, we want to do great things. We aspire to do great things. We just don't want to sit in a classroom for 8 hours. I mean,
that's exactly right.
We learn differently. You know, I was in 3 sports as a child, taekwondo. That stuff was my release, and it was where I experienced the extraordinary too, which I write about. And I tell people all the time, you know, people with ADHD, they might not get the way you're presenting, but they want to. So, Yakini, I support everything you just said, because you're trying to meet them on where they're at and how they're learning. And that goes a long way, because ADHD people are feeling generated people. And if they feel that you're trying to meet them, they're going to be like, all right, she's got my support.
Exactly. So let's talk about stresses. So, you know, we're in a very difficult time right now. And, you know, ADHD, our ADHD folks, stress is already something that can be very difficult to handle on a day-to-day basis. So what are your tips and tricks on how do you handle just your everyday stress? And then when extra stress comes around, how do you handle that?
So awesome that you ask. The method I teach that I've taught for 17 years is what I call centering. And centering is it's a meditation, however you want to look at it, is I teach people how to deep breathe, and I give them examples where I put one hand on their chest and one hand on their belly and their gut. And I always say, look at a baby. If you look at a baby in a crib, the only thing that moves on a baby when it's breathing is its stomach. Why? It's deep breathing. it doesn't have a care in the world. It's not thinking about tomorrow. It doesn't care about what happened yesterday. The only thing they're thinking about is right here and now and breathing. So I teach people how to deep breathe, because breathing really impacted my life when I was going through a lot of anxiety and stress when I was 26, to be exact. And by deep breathing to your gut, and you, like I said, just put the hands on one on the chest and one on the belly, you'll realize if the bottom hand moves and the belly moves, you're deep breathing correctly. Your lungs are being filled up. If it's not, that means you're allowing life stresses to get to you. So with centering, it involves deep breathing and then bringing your awareness from your head to your gut. Now, why do we do that? Is because your gut has the same thinking cells, that your brain does. The brain relies on the 5 human senses. So by bringing it to your gut, you're actually bringing it more to feeling in the here and now. So you're centering it in your body, and you're observing more than you're stepping into those stresses and the communication that's going on with the 5 human senses. So by just doing that, even if it's for seconds or minutes of a day, it allows you to be in the here and now and detach from all the things that could be pulling you and stressing, the familiar past and the predictable future that you're causing by these same thoughts. The other thing we teach is what I call the circle of confidence. I just have them develop a circle, and I have them remember a time in their life when they were very confident, when they knew they could do something and they did it. They re-trigger that memory and they feel that confidence. And then I have them step out of that circle with that confidence into the present situation that's bothering them. And you watch how it dissipates and how it changes. So those are a lot of the things that I work with on people, a lot of students, student athletes, parents, teachers, coaches, how to be in the here and now, be centered, and then step into the feeling you want and the state of you want. What I say, the state of confidence, people can call it other things. And once you have that state, you'll start to realize that other things kind of dissipate and fall away. And the things that were stressing you out really aren't bothering you as much anymore.
Oh, wow. That is powerful. Very cool. So do you have any, well, let's take a step back. So is there anything else that you want to share about so it's the Extraordinary Me program. Anything else you want to share about that?
So yeah, I thank you for asking, Yakini. The Extraordinary Me is very simple. I say you have a small me, which is your ego, right? It's the narrator in your head. And when you're ADHD, that narrator in your head can dominate you. You're not good enough. You're too small. You're not skinny. Whatever it may be, there's going to be comments going on in that head, and that narrator is really driving your bus, right? That's the small me. The Extraordinary Me is beyond that. It's beyond the perceptions, the limitations, the things that people would label you as. So I always say an Extraordinary Me is you're the soul with the body, not a body with the soul. The soul can't be limited. People can't define that. They can't limit that and project that and give it a label. The extraordinary is that's what we are. We're ordinary in the human sense that we all have hands, feet, legs, eyes, things of that nature. But the extra is what drives us. It's our energy, it's our spirit, it's our soul. And that can't be limited. So, Yakini, when I go back to 5th grade, when I go back to 2 years old, when I go back to the challenges and things that happened to me in my life, I lost the labels. I lost the things that people said about me. And that's what got me to perform at a level that other people, athletically and academically, that people couldn't understand. Because I knew I was beyond their perceptions. So when I work with students, student athletes, parents, teachers, coaches, the reason I bring the Extraordinary Me program is because I want them to know that you are not what others define you as. You are undefined, meaning that you can accomplish so many things that you didn't even think you could if you don't limit and label yourself. So ADHD can be that superpower for you to help guide me to the Extraordinary Me like I used. But everybody else is going to have some sort of a diagnosis or some sort of a challenge. None of us are void of that. So if you know you're extraordinary, if you really feel that and take that on as your identity, you get past your own limits and perceptions that the small me is creating for you, and you get past the labels and perceptions that society and other people are creating for you too.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's powerful. So what do you, I just thought about this. So that newly diagnosed person, so you've been doing this and managing it for a long time now. So the person that just walked in the door, so like for me, I got my initial diagnosis at 45.
Mhm.
So for that new person that's just been diagnosed, what is your tips around that?
Well, I'll go back to what I said originally was remember in any diagnosis of any kind, that's their job. Their job is to diagnose, possibly prescribe. You are in charge of the beliefs. You are in charge of your reaction to it. Viktor Frankl is someone I had studied. Had spent 4 years in the Nazi Holocaust camp, wrote Man's Search for Meaning and many other books. He always said, our attitude and response to anything that's outside of our control defines us. That's again, whatever people, even if you're diagnosed with ADHD, it can be your superpower. It can be your gift. I can feel things, I can see things, I can sense things when communicating with so many other people that so many other people miss. And I truly feel at my core, ADHD gave me that ability. Use it as your gift, not as your limitation. Whatever the diagnosis is, just remember you have a choice. How you handle it, how you perceive it is in 100% in your control.
Absolutely. So do you have any resources, any things that you use throughout life, books, or were there YouTube channels that you know, uh, tapped into, anything that you can suggest to the parents?
So with the parents, the social media, we're in the age of social media. There's a lot I have found on Instagram. That's how I found you. Twitter, social media of any kind. There's ADHD support. There's ADHD information. If you type it in, you'll find it. On top of that, remember with ADHD, it is the hyper. So that means get involved in activities. I don't care if it's yoga, don't care if it's meditation, if it's martial arts, if it's triathlons, whatever it may be, get involved in something that helps burn this energy. Because, every day at 5 a.m. I do CrossFit. Why? Because I still at 45 need to burn that energy. I let go of what happened yesterday and I prepare for today. So I'm up, I'm doing my CrossFit and I love it. Why? Because it helps burn that energy. So I'm prepared to be in the here and now. Then I go center. Then I go project on the top of the day, the type of day I want to have and who I want to be after I burn that energy.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Any last minute closing remarks? Anything that you would like to conclude with?
Yakini, I can't thank you enough for reaching out to me and inviting me on. I am so honored to know you. I am so honored that you are taking, let's say, the bull by the horns, and you're creating awareness and you're holding these interviews, because there is so much information that is out there that people want to learn about and to use to manage this. And it is very manageable, but remember, don't ever think of this as a limitation. Know that you are extraordinary. Know that you have the opportunity to really use this as your superpower, to heighten your senses in different ways and learn in different ways. Thank you for taking, again, the forefront on this, Yakini, and getting the information out there. You are a wonderful resource for this, and I really hope more and more people follow you in time.
I appreciate that. So, one of the things that I want to do, and why I'm talking to so many different parents and people too, and they're not all parents, subject matter experts, is because there are so many different directions and journeys. Everybody has their own journey. And I'm hoping that, even though, for example, people may not connect with what I say, they may connect with what you say, or they may connect with what another person says, because we all have different aspects of ADHD. We all have different directions that we take. Some people struggled a lot more with it than others. And so I just want to be able to have a well-rounded group of people that people can tap into. So I think that's very important. So thank you. So thank you so much for being on here, Adam. I just totally appreciate your time. And I look forward to connecting with you soon.
Same here. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.